All right, I'm answering the question, duxelle, how to make duxelle, what is duxelle, or as the French call it, and it is a French word, duxelle, or duxelle. They don't pronounce the X the way we do. D-U-X-E-L-L-E, duxelle. All righty, this is a mushroom and onion hash, if you will, that's kind of like a paste. They're both sauteed individually, finely chopped, dried a little bit with a towel, seasoned with a little bit of tomato paste and some salt and pepper. This is used for multiple uses. The list is so long, I mean, I could sit here and go through 100 items that I put it in myself. It's particularly being used in the stuffed cabbage roll in the vegetable DVD, and that's part of the reason why this particular skill video is being made. But you can use duxelle for a number of things. A couple of quick examples: stuffing your artichoke bottom in your cleaned and cut artichoke, maybe mixing it with a little bit of blue cheese, whatever. Stuffing mushrooms with this mushroom and onion hash with some cheese or without some cheese, or with shrimp or crab or whatever you feel like. Duxelle goes on top of so many things, like I used to serve it on a dish in Chicago at a place where I was a chef for many years, where we took a slice of eggplant, sauteed it so it was almost tender enough to eat, and then we put the duxelle on top and then baked it and gratinade a gorgonzola or Roquefort cheese sauce over the top. It was a nice item. It was very popular. But the duxelle just adds flavor to things. All by itself, it tastes good. So I'm going to get on with showing you how to do that first. First, I'm going to dice an onion. And you do have a video for dicing an onion, but I'm going to go through it with you one more time real quick. Don't cut the onion. Oops, let me get a better knife. Don't cut the onion all the way through here. See, the onion's still in one piece, sort of. It's just cut almost all the way through. I'm going to do this slowly. And then again, I'm not cutting it all the way through. And it comes right up diced like that. Look at that. And then when you get to the back end of the onion, you cut that up separately. Then we're going to get this. Half onion is all I need here for this demonstration for you. We're going to take this half onion and I'm going to put a little bit of butter into this hot saute pan I got here. I'm using whole butter. You can use clarified butter. I suggest butter, even though you can use olive oil. It just tastes better, I think. I'm going to put a little bit of dried leaf thyme and a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. And we're going to saute that real quick. And now we're going to slice up some mushrooms. And something I haven't showed you in any previous videos, and that is how to slice a mushroom. Of course, I'm going to slice the mushrooms for the duxelle like this, because I'm going to chop the mushrooms anyway. But there's multiple ways to slice the mushroom. Once you can take the stem out, for example, and let's say you wanted the mushrooms in a sauce, like in the brown mushroom sauce from the Stock and Sauce DVD, for example. You can cut the mushroom in half and then slice it. Now, the reason you might do that is because now it's going on a fork inside of a sauce, which is different. You don't need the mushrooms to be that big. It would be disproportionately too big if you did what I'm doing here to put it in a sauce, for example. Okay? So let me get some of these mushrooms sliced up here real quick. And I'll show you slowly another way to handle the mushroom while you're slicing it. Now it starts to get too far down for you. Boom, you can put it over on its side again. Until you get used to holding almost nothing of a mushroom. Now there's one more little thing I'm going to show you about slicing mushrooms, and it's also a thing to put into your knife skill repertoire, and that is How to make sure you don't cut yourself with the knife. Now, how to make sure. I don't know if make sure are the right words, but I have this ridiculous saying that I tell students all the time about cutting themselves and handling their knives. And it sounds like this. The only time you cut yourself is immediately after you're pointing the knife at yourself. Unless, of course, it falls off of a table and hits your foot or something like that. But while you're using the knife, you're only going to cut yourself if you're aiming the knife at yourself. Unless, again, it's a ricochet or something like that. For example, if I aim the knife slightly away from me, I'm not aiming at myself. If I aimed it slightly in and I was slicing, I'd kind of be aiming it at myself. So aim it away, and you really can't hit yourself. If you do, it's because your hand slips or something like that. I'm at the point, if you bring the camera up to my eyes, where I can do this without looking at the mushrooms because I know there's not a chance that I'm going to slice myself because I'm aiming the knife away from myself. How do they say this? Don't try this at home. You can, but just be careful. All right, so there's some sliced mushrooms. And we're going to do the same thing with them as we're doing with the onions. And that's we're going to saute them in a little bit of butter, but with just some salt and pepper. And again, I have a little hot pan here. Mushrooms have a tendency to absorb more butter, of course, than onions. And I'm going to throw a little bit of salt and pepper on the mushrooms. Again, being careful not to put what I think is the total amount of salt that's going to go into those mushrooms. Because at the end, I want to be able to season the duxelle with the salt. I don't want the whole thing to be too salty. I put too much on it now, especially considering the fact that this is all going to shrink down. By the time you wring it out, cook it, chop it, in the case of the mushrooms, we have to chop them again after they're sauteed. By the time you do all that, the whole thing shrinks, which means the amount of salt that used to be in a larger amount is now in a smaller amount. So that looks like a lot, so it's not. My point is, don't put too much salt in this, okay? All right, I'm going to give these two items about 3 or 4 minutes to saute, and I'm going to take a time-elapsed runaway real quick, and I'll be back in 3 or 4 minutes right now. We're about 3 or 4 minutes has elapsed since I just said that, and the onions are cooked, and I'm going to put the onions on a towel. They even started to brown a little bit, and this is not a browning type thing, not to suggest that that would hurt them or anything, but you see, this kind of absorbs some of the grease, spread them out a little bit, give them a chance to cool. We'll set them over there for a minute until we get done with the mushrooms, and the mushrooms are cooked. Mushroom is probably the only veg that I know of offhand, although the squashes are a lot like this too. That's about 90% water. You can start out with this much mushrooms, but if you puree them and dry the water out of them, you can end up with this little golf ball sized thing of mushrooms. All right, so we'll take the sauteed mushrooms now. Just give them a quick little draining. Oh, they didn't drain too much. Now we're going to chop them. Now, every time I show somebody how to do this, they always say, can't we just chop them first before we saute them? No, you cannot. In order for them to be cooked the way you want them to be in terms of their taste and texture in the duxelle, you have to slice them, saute them, drain them, then chop them, then wring them out in order for to have that texture that you're looking for, okay? So we're going to quick chop these mushrooms. I listed the duxelle under skills, even though it is a specific food preparation per se, only because I see this more as like a cooking condiment, if you will, you know? Not like mustard or ketchup, but, you know, in that realm. You put it with things and on things and over things and around things and as part of things. You don't serve it by itself. Depending on the use, might determine how finely you're going to chop it. I think for my use today, which is going to be for the stuffed cabbage rolls and the vegetable DVD, this is chopped enough. Now, I'm going to take the mushroom and do a little bit like I do with chopped parsley after I wash it. And put it in a towel, and we're going to wring it out. And you can see just how much water comes out of it. Look at that. Now this mushroom water, by the way, is really good, but we don't want it in our duxelle. If you happen to have a stock or a sauce or a soup or something like that floating around, just wring it out right over that. Look at the amount of water that came out of those mushrooms. And let's take a peek inside the towel. Look at that. All right. Now we're going to put the mushroom and the onion together. We're going to season it. I shouldn't say season it. We're going to put a little bit of tomato paste in it, a very small amount, which is the thing that's going to make the duxelle kind of stick together, if you will, so it's not like loose chopped onion and mushroom. The tomato paste kind of makes it one thing, if you will, okay? So I'm going to take the onion that's been drained. I like my duxelle nice and dry, which is where this is going right here. Now, I'm going to put a very small amount of tomato paste. Remember, I want you to think of the tomato paste being added to your duxelle a little bit like salt and pepper. Put the tomato paste in increments until you get the amount in that you want. Don't throw in what you think, because the stuff is very deceiving, and the duxelle doesn't need that much tomato paste, okay? So I'm going to start out with that much for all of this. It's going to get just a little bit messy. Let me see if I can... Yeah, I can use the rubber scraper for this. If I was making a fair amount of this stuff, you know, I was cooking for somebody besides myself, I'd probably have some rubber gloves on when I get in here. I love to toss salads with rubber gloves. There's nothing worse than tongs when you're trying to toss something sometimes. Okay, I think I have the right amount of tomato paste in here. Right there. I could put a little bit more, but I'm not going to. But before I do all that and make decisions that I'm done, first we're going to taste this, then we're going to check it for salt and pepper, and I'm going to put it away for whatever use you're going to be making it for. You can freeze the duxelle. Make sure it's in a fully airtight container so it doesn't absorb any moisture. Nothing worse than going through all the trouble of making this dry and then putting it somewhere where it's going to get a little bit of condensation before you use it. So let's just have a taste of the duxelle the way it is. It definitely needs a little bit of salt and pepper. That means that I didn't put too much in to begin with. If I did, that would be a problem after that little lecture I gave you about not doing that. All right, let's mix that up and see where we're at with that. This stuff is delicious all by itself. It really is. You can put this on top of garlic bread with melt some mozzarella cheese on top of it, and it'll be delicious. I've never done that, but I'm certainly sure you could. Again, this is a necessary condiment that you want to have in your repertoire. And it's a little bit like tomato concasse. Although it's a slightly prepared food that you might use to do things like you do with tomato concasse, I still call it a condiment, you know? Let's give that a taste. It's good to go right now. And one more thing to mention about this here, this is an item that can be used hot or cold in the final service and being ready to, and preparing something to finish it for eating. Usually it's served hot, but it can be included as part of a cold thing in something, okay? And it still tastes great. So there you have it, mushroom and onion duxelle, also known as mushroom and onion hash, which is what this is. And it's worth mentioning that there are a number of French cooks who have been brought up through the ranks of cooking, learning to make this with shallots and mushrooms, or shallot, mushroom, and onion. And that's all okay, too, as long as it's done well. But regular dry Spanish onions would be the model that you should use to make this. There you go. Enjoy your duxelle. Keep it in your repertoire forever.